My name is Bernard Offen, and I am 82 years young. And I was born in Poland, in Krakow, Poland. And I returned to Krakow, Poland for 6 months of the year as part of my healing process to confront my past, where it happened in Auschwitz and the Plaszow camp and the Krakow ghetto. And I bring people and I tell them the stories that happened to my family and I. So I am most honored to be invited to share my story with you.
Hello, Bernard. It's a pleasure to be here with you. It's an honor.
Nice to meet you and your family. It's an honor.
Thanks very much. Well, I think that for the audience that we have today, for this young audience, we will talk about your experience, the values that you have got from all that. And to start, why don't you tell us a bit about where were you born, your family, how was the beginning of your life? If you are 82 years young, let's start by the beginning.
I was born in Krakow, Poland in 1929. I am part of a family of 6 people. I have 2 brothers who survived. I had a sister who did not survive. Neither did my mother, grandmother, and almost 60 other people in my larger family did not survive.
How old were you when you started feeling that the war was starting, or you started feeling that something was wrong, that the things were changing around you? How old were you when that happened?
I was almost 10 when the war started. And I always heard on the radio when I went to visit my uncle who lived nearby, Hitler's speeches. I did not understand it, but I had a sense from what they said in reaction to what they heard on the radio, that it was not, that it was going to be dangerous for Jews especially. And I did not understand why would it be especially dangerous for Jews. So that was my first understanding.
There was something going on.
Yes.
How was the ghetto formed? How was your experience at the beginning of the ghetto in Poland?
The invasion started in 1939. And soon after within several months, we as Jews had to wear armbands with a Star of David on the arm, and we were being slowly segregated. Within a few months, there was raids. That means German army trucks were coming into the area in which I live. There was no ghetto as yet, but they, at the pointing of a gun by the soldiers, people were forced to get onto a truck. And if the person resisted, they were just shot down. And if you see a person who was shot, you get on the truck. So at first they were taking people to work, and sometimes the people did not come back for quite some time. But some of them showed up in the ghetto, pre-ghetto time, back in the area, and some people never reappeared again. My brothers were forced to work. My father was also forced to work. And now we can jump from 39 to 41 because the ghetto, the Krakow ghetto, did not begin till 1941. And there was a wall built around an area of Krakow. If you can imagine a part of Madrid being surrounded by barbed wire and walls that were 3 meters high and surrounded by guards, and you cannot come out of there, and you don't have enough to eat, and you see people starving right in the streets, then you begin to imagine what the ghetto might have looked like. My mother and sister disappeared from the ghetto on a transport. There were many times within the ghetto itself, people were forced to get on transports, or they were walked out of the ghetto, and whoever resisted was just shot along the way. So my mother and sister disappeared. That was already 1943. And at that time, and before that time, I was smuggling food. I escaped from the ghetto. There were ways to escape from the ghetto through bribing the guards, and I went to trade things, clothing or other items for food. And then I used to bring it into the ghetto, and we shared it with the family, and sold some of the food to others so I could go and do it again. I did that many times. But one particular time, my father and mother told me to go and go out the ghetto and smuggle food once more. And it was very, very earlier than normally. I would go out the ghetto maybe 6 o'clock in the morning before all the guards were in place. But this was maybe 2 o'clock in the morning, 1 a.m. And I did what my parents told me. So they walked along the perimeter of where the barbed wire was, and they looked out for the guards, and they lifted up the wire, and I slid under the wire and escaped into the hills. I never understood it at that time, why they wanted me to go smuggle food earlier than normal. So I did that. And when I tried to get back in, I had pants that were tied here, and I had a jacket that was here. That was stuffed full of potatoes and bread and whatever I could trade for food. I could not return to the ghetto, and I heard shooting and screams, and I was hidden in a part of the Krakow area is high in the hills in some areas, and I was hidden in the bushes, and I could see the ghetto, but I could not get back in because it was surrounded by more SS troops and their helpers, Ukrainians, Latvians, other nations that joined in with the Germans. And I waited, and I heard screams and shootings. And when it was over. It was later towards the afternoon, late afternoon. All the guards disappeared, and I could come back in. It was not a problem to get back in. And my mother and my sister were gone, disappeared. And I saw my father, and my father was not the same man when I left that morning, because his wife, my mother, his daughter, my sister Miriam, she was 2 years older than I, so she was 12 years old, disappeared. And we did not know what happened to them for many years. We just knew that they did not exist anymore. After the war, we found out that the train transports were taken to a extermination camp called Belzec, in which 600,000 people were murdered. Factories of death.
When did you move to your first concentration camp? When was that?
That would be already, oh, thank you. That would be already in 1943, because the ghetto existed 41 to 43.
Okay. Yes.
In 43, the ghetto was closed, and I was marched with my brothers and my father to the nearby Plaszow camp, which was 2 kilometers from the Krakow ghetto. And that was my first camp. Within a short time, I escaped from that camp because we were ordered, that means within the camp itself, the younger people, and I was one of the young ones, were ordered to report to the square within the camp itself. And since we knew what's going to happen if you don't report, you're going to be shot on sight wherever they find you. So reported, because maybe something good might happen. And we were taken out on horse-drawn wagons. There were about 3 wagons. And as we were being transported out of the camp, I heard one of the guards joking or maybe warning me that we were going to be shot. All the children were going to be shot.
How old were you then?
I was already 13. And I jumped from the wagon, and so did some others. And I heard shooting, but I kept running, and I hid myself. And here I am is the answer that
it's really difficult. How was the separation from your father? How was that time where you did not see him anymore? How was the goodbye from your father?
Well, you know, it's you just pulled away from your nearest family, just pulled away, and it's as if they don't exist anymore. And you're in your own little world, and you try to survive. And throughout my camp experience, I was always with men, and I had help from them. I had given a piece of bread or some clothing or some help in other ways. And I remember their faces of many of the people that helped me, and I called them my angels.
You're talking about your stay in Auschwitz. When you were in Auschwitz?
Yeah, that's later, yes. But that help began in the Plaszow camp. I escaped, and a Polish family helped me. They hid me for 2 days, and they gave me food, and I had to leave because if I would have been caught in their house, they would have all been shot with me. So I also like to mention their name because they took risks that, like your grandfather took risks because he saved so many people. Their name was Czechlik, Władysław Czechlik, and they too were heroes.
You were in Auschwitz, which is probably the most known concentration camp that we all know and have seen many, many times. Can you tell us how was an, let's say, ordinary day, to call it ordinary, in your life in Auschwitz?
Well, there were other camps before I got to Auschwitz, but okay, Auschwitz, a day in Auschwitz. I was in barracks number 5 in the quarantine camp, and again I had these men who were helping me. So they said, you pick up a broom and start sweeping, and you're going to sleep up there. And if you can imagine starving men trying to share one loaf of bread, because every 4 men were given 1 loaf of bread. And so you had to divide it so everyone had an equal amount of bread, because we were all starving. And the way we did that was that someone in the barracks had a scale in which to weigh the bread. A scale was a piece of string, a little stick, and then from the end of the stick were tied 2 little toothpicks that were plunged into the bread, and then they were weighed. And if one was too high, too low, so a little piece was cut off and moved to the other side. If you can imagine 4 people looking at that, then you can imagine what starvation was.
You've talked about the angels because you were in the concentration camp, and perhaps you can explain about what you saw there, about the best things of people, the worst thing of people. How was the values that people had inside? I guess that in those situations, people have either the best or the worst side of their personality. Is this like that?
One of the worst things I felt was the stealing of other people's possession, especially food, piece of bread. My methodology of surviving was that I saved 1 piece of bread the whole night. And many did that, the same thing. So in the morning, I would have something to eat. But some other people stole from the people that little piece of bread. That was one thing. But I also saw the murder of many people. And in the morning, from the barracks, the corpses were dragged out from the places where we were sleeping. Yeah, and they had to be laid out, and they were counted all the time. If there was anyone missing, and there could be, so it lasted for a long, long time. We had to stand, and many times they did that just to torture us. That the count was not right. There were many reasons that they had just to torture us.
Was there any friendship Was there any friendship among the people or between the people that were inside the campus, the concentration camp? Did anyone give help to other people?
There were friendships. Friendships were mostly formed around people who came from the same town, or they knew each other, or they were family. So if you had someone close that knew you and you knew them, that was the help. It was a very big factor in surviving. My brothers were together from the time of the ghetto throughout all the camps until liberation. They were together and they're helping each other. So there was also the incident of the leader of the barracks in Auschwitz,
yes, who
helped me to survive. And he warned me that tomorrow there's going to be an inspection. And so he said to me, when it is your turn to go up before the SS man, he says, run up there and don't look him in the face, look at his boots. And I did that. I ran up there and looked at the boots, and he says, okay, go that way. And it turned out that I found out that the SS man was Dr. Mengele. If you know who Dr. Mengele was,
we heard many times.
He was an SS doctor doing experiments, torturous experiments, and murdered many, many people in Auschwitz with his medical experiments. So people say to me, oh, you saw Mengele. And I said, no, I never saw him. I only saw his boots. So that's one of the experiences.
One of your experiences. You were in 5 concentration camps?
Yes.
What force, or what did you, how could you felt on going, or how could you kept on going? What gave you force, or what gave you will to live under those circumstances?
One was anger with God. Why am I here? And I was there because I was Jewish. And in that dialogue in the head, I said, if you let me out of here, I will change my religion to any religion you want. But let me out of here. So that was one of the other was that also I had a strong will to survive. And you don't know what luck played, or God played in that whole time. One of the things I wanted to do is survive because I wanted to make films and also be a witness to tell what transpired. And look what I'm doing.
Here you are.
I am fulfilling my mission because truly I don't want anything like that to transpire in the world for anybody, not even the Germans, anybody. And if we don't turn away from hatred of others because they're different, something similar can happen again.
Yeah. That's a really interesting conclusion of your thought. How was the moment of your liberation? I mean, we have seen many times in the movies where the American people come, or where you were in a concentration camp. How did you felt the day that you saw, or perhaps you perceived, that this hell was over? How do you remember that day? Can you tell us your experience of the moment that?
In actuality, the moment of liberation was a very frightening experience.
Was frightening?
Frightening. And that's very strange. I knew in the camp what was happening, and of course there was fear, but that fear was already subsided because there was an acceptance of what was happening to me and around me. Mm-hmm. It was a sort of a getting used to. But there was the moment of fear. What's going to happen now? What is beyond the barbed wire fence and we're surrounded with guards? What is beyond that? So there was a moment of fear. You might say it's crazy to experience such a thing, but that is really, I remember that moment. So
fear and happiness.
Yes, fear and happiness. And I was grateful, and I'm grateful to this day to the
Were the American
army that liberated me. Yes. We were put.
What was the first thing they told you when they opened the door? I guess I don't know how that moment can be.
Well, we were at that time. I was in the Dachau camp, not Auschwitz,
not
but
Auschwitz.
Dachau camp.
Yes.
And we were put on a forced march, a death march. Mm-hmm. And there were thousands of us marching down back roads in Germany. And whoever could not keep up with the march was just shot there, and the rest of us. So one evening, we were put into a barracks, which it was, I think, a former army barracks. And in the morning, when we wake up, I remember looking out around me, and I didn't see any guards. And
you were free.
And since I was one of the stronger prisoners, I was asked to go and get some help. So they told me, go in the direction in which we came, because we don't know what's ahead, but we know what is behind us. So I went, and in that direction I had to cross a river because the bridge was blown up, and I heard shooting, I heard artillery, and I hid myself in a bombed-out farmhouse, and I kept looking out, and I heard machines. It turned out to be tanks, and I did not know what it was. So when I saw the tank, I saw a star on the tank, and I did not know if that was Russians or Americans. I just didn't know. But when I came out of held my hands up high, and I made noise so they would see me. And it could have been Russian, could have been Americans. They saw me, and they took me to a company commander. I told them what was happening with me, and that there were prisoners there who needed help, and they sent 2 soldiers with me. And unfortunate thing is that they sent 2 soldiers, and they took some military rations, chocolate and other foods, and they distributed them to everyone. People who ate the chocolate and other rations got very sick, and some of them died. My brother almost died because the food that they were distributing was not something that we could tolerate. What we needed was bread.
Yeah.
And soup. So it's, they tried to help, and
Yeah,
they did.
they did, but it
yeah.
was...
I remained with my liberators for almost a few months. Yes.
And, okay, my last question, because I think that probably most people want to ask you questions, will be, how was the meeting with your two brothers? Because that was the rest of your family that unfortunately died. You had two brothers. How did you found them, and how was the meeting with them?
Well, after being liberated, I stayed with my liberators for a while. They gave me food, and doctors helped me to recover. And then I started to think about my family, if there's anyone who survived.
Who left was left.
Yeah. So that was near Munich. Mm-hmm. And I went to a refugee camp in Munich, and I discovered there was a book of people who survived the camps, printed by the United Nations organization, and I found my brother's names in there.
Yeah.
My name did not appear at that time. So within the next day, I found out where my brothers were. So they said, well, they went to Austria, to Salzburg, a refugee camp. So transportation, there were no buses, no regular passenger trains. So the only way, trains with coal and other supplies to restart civilization, you might say, is what was moving. So someone said, if you want to get to Salzburg, get on this coal train. So you see these coal trains with lots of coal.
In movies,
so you get on this and sit there, and it'll go. So when I sit, and the train keeps going for many hours, and when I saw people, when it slowed down, I asked, is das Salzburg? Nein. Oh, okay, nein, no. So I keep going. I keep sitting. Is das Salzburg? Is this Salzburg? Yes. So I get down, and I go to the refugee camp, and I ask about my brothers. He says, oh, yes, your brothers. Yes, they were here, but they're no longer here. Where did they go? Well, they went to Italy. Okay, so it's still, the emotions are still there about the process of finding. So I had to wait about a month, because I did not have any documents. Because nothing as far as documentation of who we are, what is your name, where do you live, and all that, when were you born, did not exist. So they made up some documents for me. And about a month later, I went on a train, truck transport over the Alps with Italian refugees to let's see, that was Ancona. And I knew where my brothers were sent to another refugee camp, and I asked at the office, oh, my brothers? Oh, yes. They were here, but they're no longer here. So, so where did they go? Well, they were sent to a Polish army hospital. There was a Polish army which was under the control of the British, and they because we were Polish citizens at that time. They went into the army, and they were put in a hospital because they were not in very good shape. So, again, I hitchhiked, I went by train, anywhere I could. It took me a few days to go to that hospital, and I get to the hospital, and I ask about my brothers. Oh, yes, your brothers. They were here, but they were discharged, and they went to a regular army camp to be trained as soldiers. I asked, and where is that? And they gave me an address and provided me transportation, a truck that was going to that camp. And so days later, I get to that camp, and I ask, about my brothers. You see, all of this time, my brothers did not know I was looking for them.
No telephones.
Because they thought that I, too, died. So I asked, he says, oh, yes, your brothers, they're here. However, they're not here now because they went on leave. They had a army leave.
For one day,
yes, for a few days. So I asked, and where did they go? Oh, they went to the town of Bari.
Bari.
Yes. And so next day I got a transport again, got to the town of Bari, and I go to the canteen there, the main hotel, because it was a rest place for soldiers, and ask about my brothers. And they said, oh, yes, your brothers are someplace out there walking on the grounds with other soldiers. So I go out and keep going. I see some soldiers, and I ask, have you seen my brothers? And I tell them the names. Yes, they were someplace out there. And so I keep going. And I see two soldiers in shorts, khaki shorts, and they look like my brothers, so I keep going, and so the moment of finding them is, and now it's so many years ago, it's still so fresh. Of course, we greeted each other and we cried, and I had to inform them that our father was murdered in Auschwitz when we arrived in Auschwitz. And so after that reunion, I stayed with them in the army barracks with all the soldiers around, with all their equipment, rifles and everything the soldiers have, for a little while. But I no longer could remain there after about 2 weeks, and I had to leave, and I went to a refugee camp quite some distance away, and that's the way I
found them, which is what
found
was
my
really important.
brothers. Yes.
Very
My
good.
oldest brother is 90, and my middle brother is 88. And I have their books that they have written in the lobby someplace for you to just to look at if you wish, and my book and my films for you just to look. And there's some information about that, but they're not for sale, but there's information about that. So.
Okay, Bernard, we are going to go over there and sit, and we're going to read a couple of questions. Thank you very, very much for your testimony. I think it's been very helpful to understand what you've been through, and your learnings, your inner learnings are also very important. And now we're going to go there and see what the people want to ask you with this new system called Twitter that probably was not on 20 years ago.
Okay, thank you.